Several actuators are used in the flight control system. The unit installed in each wing, just aft of the nacelle, is the flap actuator. The unit installed under the dorsal fairing is called the pitch trim actuator. The mechanical units that move the aileron and rudder trim tabs are called the trim actuator, with the surface controlled as part of the name, such as rudder trim actuator. Several bell cranks are used in the flight control system. There is no precise definition as to what the difference is between a bow tie and a bell crank. As such, the unit located midway in the fuselage is either called the aileron bell crank or aileron bow tie because of its shape. The unit to which the rudder control cables attach to the rudder is the rudder bell crank or rudder bow tie. The two units mounted on the forward pressure bulkhead that link the pilot's and co-pilot's rudder pedals are called the rudder pedal bell cranks. The unit located in the wing near the inboard end of each aileron is the aileron bell crank, sometimes referred to as the Porkchop because of its shape. The unit mounted on the forward side of the forward canted bulkhead that actuates the rudder and elevator gust locks is called the rudder gust lock bell crank, or rudder and elevator gust lock bell crank. Flight control cables are usually referred to by the surface they are attached to, such as rudder cable, elevator cable, aileron trim cable, and so on. The exception are the cables that connect the SAS servo to the control column, which are usually referred to as stick pusher cables. The fittings used in the control cable system all follow standard aircraft terminology, such as turn barrels, terminals, and cable balls. All fittings used in the flight control system are swage type attachment. The two bulkheads to which the forward and aft vertical stabilizer spars are bolted to lean backwards and are usually referred to as the canted bulkheads. The larger of the two, located fuselage station 566, is frequently referred to as the forward canted bulkhead, while the one located at fuselage station 616 is usually called the aft canted bulkhead. The large lead weight connected to the control column is called the bob weight. The large spring installed under the dorsal fairing is called the elevator downspring. The pivoting unit located below the cockpit floor area is called the elevator walking beam. The major cast assembly used to link the elevators and the elevator control cable system is called the elevator bell crank, elevator quadrant, or simply the quadrant. Components of the wing flap system include the flap lock valve, sometimes referred to as the blow-up valve, which is located aft of the main gear attachment in each nacelle. The flap position indicator, or flap indicator, is located in the instrument panel. The unit located on the right-hand side of the pedestal is the flap control, or flap handle. The control box located forward of the pilot's feet is called the flap control box, or flap and gear warning control box. The potentiometer installed inboard of the right-hand flap is the flap position transmitter, sometimes called the flap position follower. Components of the gust lock system include the handle installed in the pedestal is the gust lock handle, or gust lock control. The unit that actually locks each control is called the gust lock pin. The spring-loaded portion of each pin is called the gust lock plunger. The unit that connects the gust lock pin and gust lock cable is called the lock arm. The component name usually includes the name of the surface controlled, such as rudder gust lock pin or aileron gust lock arm. Hinges and bearings used in the flight control system include riveted assemblies that are bolted to the wing or stabilizer spar and are referred to by the control surface that they accept, such as rudder hinge or elevator hinge. Because of its design difference, the most inboard elevator hinge point is called the elevator bearing or inboard hinge bearing. The lowermost rudder hinge point is usually referred to as the Rudder Bellcrank bearing. The bearing that the horizontal stabilizer rotates on is called the horizontal stabilizer pivot. Flap hinges are contained in assemblies referred to as flap bearing links. The two units on either side of the control column are called the control column bearings. The two units that support the control wheel are called the control wheel bearings. The units that the walking beam pivots on are called walking beam bearings. The major pivot for the horizontal stabilizers is called the horizontal stabilizer pivot, sometimes called the horizontal stabilizer pivot bolt. The actual bolt itself is really two entirely separate units that create an assembly, usually called the pivot bolt. The components that mechanically link the flaps together collectively are called the flap interconnect system. The major pivoting units are called flap walking beams. The units that connect the walking beam to the flaps are called the interconnect links. The bearing that connects the walking beams at the aircraft center line is called the interconnect bearing, or the walking beam bearing. Components of the pitch trim system include an indicator installed in the instrument panel called the pitch trim indicator, or trim indicator. A horn located on the right-hand console is called the out-of-trim warning horn. The electrical box located in the right-hand console is called the pitch trim indication control box, or pitch trim indicator control box. The small units located above the pilot and co-pilot's head are called sonalerts. These units should really be referred to as the trim in motion alert, since sonalert is actually a trade name and could lead to confusion. The two independent units in each control wheel are the pitch trim switches, sometimes called the yoke switches. They are usually further identified by position as well, such as pilot's pitch trim switch. The dual mechanically ganged switch assembly located in the pedestal is called the pitch trim transfer switch. The single switch located in the pedestal is called the auxiliary trim switch, or aux switch. The switches located in the vertical stabilizer are called the pitch trim limit switches, and as an assembly is sometimes referred to as the birdcage. The potentiometer installed in this unit is called a position transmitter, or pitch trim indicator potentiometer. Routing of control cables is facilitated through standard aircraft hardware. Pulley mounting devices are called pulley brackets. Devices used to prevent cables from coming off of pulleys and bell cranks are called control cable guards. Numerous push-pull tubes and rods are used in the flight control system. Some of these units are sometimes referred to as torque tubes. The best rule of thumb is that if it moves back and forth, it should be called a push-pull tube. If it rotates, it should be called a torque tube. The unit that transmits motion to the ailerons through the wing are called aileron push-pull tubes. The smaller unit that connects the aileron to the aileron bell crank is the aileron push-pull rod, sometimes called the Aileron Link. Components of the SAS system include the unit mounted on the right-hand side of the nose section is called the angle of attack transmitter, or SAS vane. The unit installed in the right side console is called the SAS Computer. The control box, located in front of the co-pilot's feet, is the SAS Control Box, sometimes called the SAS Horn Control Box because it contains the SAS horn, and sometimes called the SAS Heat Control Box because it contains components related to the SAS heat system. The unit installed on the left-hand side of the glare shield is called the SAS Indicator. It is sometimes incorrectly referred to as the angle of attack indicator. The switch installed in the pilot's side console is the SAS Test Switch. The switch located in the pedestal is the SAS Servo Switch, sometimes called the SAS Servo Clutch Switch. Indications in the cockpit include an SAS fault light, SAS arm light, and SAS de-ice lights installed in the annunciator panel. The unit installed under the center aisle floorboards is called the SAS Servo, Stick Pusher, or Stick Pusher Servo. The capstan installed in front of the servo is the Stick Pusher capstan. The unit installed within the capstan that allows the pilot to override the pusher is called the slip clutch, or mechanical clutch. It should not be confused with the electrical clutch installed in the servo itself. The control box, located in the right-hand side console, is called the SAS Idle Control Box, sometimes referred to as the Servo Keep Alive Control Box. The potentiometer installed inboard of the left-hand flap is the SAS Flap Position Transmitter, sometimes called the Flap Follower. Several pressurization seals are used in the flight control system. Cable seals include those used on the trim cables, usually referred to by the name of the cable lay seal, as in Aileron Trim Cable Seal. The larger seals that are used on the elevator cables are called the elevator cable seals. Rubber O-ring seals are used on the aileron bow tie torque tube and bearing housing. These are called the torque tube seals. There is also a rubber O-ring used to seal the rudder torque tube where it penetrates the fuselage vessel, called the torque tube seal. The units that connect the aileron push-pull tubes to each other are called swing links. The units that connect the flap to the aircraft structure are called the flap swing links. The larger of these units that connects the flap actuator to the flap is also a swing link, but is sometimes referred to as the flap porkchop because of its shape. Stops are usually referred to by the unit they control. For example, aileron stops, rudder stops, elevator stops, aileron trim stops, rudder trim stops. The mechanical stops for the pitch, trim, and flap system are internal in their respective actuators. The large tube attached to the rudder structure is called the rudder torque tube. The large tube attached to the inboard end of each elevator is referred to as the elevator torque tube. The tube that attaches to the Aileron Bellcrank or bow tie and connects to the Aileron push-pull tubes is called the Aileron torque tube. Components of the trim tab system include controls installed in the pedestal identified by the tab they control, such as Aileron Trib Tab Control or Aileron Trib Tab Wheel. The center of the control that shows the tab position is the indicator. The unit that is rotated by turning the trim tab control is the trim tab capstan. Chains and sprockets used in the system are usually referred to by the tab involved, such as right-hand aileron trim actuator sprocket. The silver cylindrical unit connected between the control column and the pedestal is called the Viscous Damper. It is also sometimes called the control column damper or elevator damper.